Abyss. Quite a few questions about your working with him, not just in the ring, but also in backstage segments. And also, actually, I'd like to know what he brought to the table as far as ideas or suggestions, not once again in the ring, but also backstage segments or character building stuff. Were the segments with Abyss fun? And I ask this because we've seen Abyss or Chris Park now in WWE Unreal, and he seems like the most nervous guy in the entire world.
Oh, he's not having fun there.
No. But yes, working with Abyss then. So take us back to the beginning. How was he?
Oh, he was great. I mean, you could be very, how should I say, protective of your gimmick and your spot in the storyline. And here comes a guy that's put people over for 4 or 5 more years in WWE and doesn't have a lot of stuff to bring at Stevie Richards. Of course, it's Dr. Stevie. And of course, Abyss here, this is very important for context. How much was Abyss being watered down as a monster for months and months and months? My job and what I offered to do to Jeff Jarrett, to Vince Russo, and anybody else that would listen to politic for the Dr. Stevie spot, because they started mentioning his therapist when I was still with WWE. And I said, that's the guy I want to be. So I did not make communication with Terry Taylor until after my release and my 90 days officially to say, I want the Dr. Stevie spot. I started saying Dr. Stevie, as a matter of fact, to Terry Taylor to plant the seed. Then when they said, yes, we're going to bring you in, we talked to Jeff, we talked to Dixie, they think it'll be a good fit. And I was also saying, no mention of Stevie Richards, no mention. This is a clean slate. Dr. Stevie, don't show my face for as long as possible. Vince Russo already knew that. Hey, we're not going to show your face. We're just going to shoot from behind. People know it's you, but 6 to 8 weeks of vignettes, therapy sessions with Abyss. When I think I called him a couple of times. We had some short conversations. When I met him, I said, this is all about you, making you a monster again. I'm here to serve you as the heel to the babyface. Of course, I need to get some heat, but this is all about you. And of course, he was all for it. He was all for what Vince was offering. Dutch was involved a little bit because obviously Abyss was his pet project from Puerto Rico to TNA. So we had a good collaboration of this. And I firsthand got to see what eventually in TNA and eventually in WWE, what people know Abyss for, and that's his mind, agency matches, having a mind for characters and storylines. This was kind of my first exposure to see what a mind Abyss had for the business. And we all worked together to make it what it was.
Was he an overthinker back then as well?
Oh, yeah, 100%. I can appreciate that. I didn't apologize or ask people if I made them mad as much as Abyss. But yeah, the details, he had OCD for that stuff.
You said beforehand Abyss was being watered down. So let's go from 2008. In your opinion, how's he being watered down? Why was he not the Abyss of 2004, 5, 6 kind of thing?
Well, I think because he was starting to be like a friendly monster. They were starting to take some stuff away from him. He was putting people over. He wasn't as much of a force. In other words, he was selling too much. He was bumping. I think he was even doing jobs. They were watering him down, not purposely, but they needed a character to get some heat, but then to bring out that old Abyss monster, the one that worked AJ Styles and the one from the early days, the weekly pay-per-views, that kind of stuff. Hey, if you want to blow your mind, Chris Parks came out to the Abyss music in very early TNA days without a mask or anything.
He did, indeed. I think he's in the first episode.
Yes.
In the Battle Royal.
First maybe. 1 or 2 episodes of the weekly pay-per-views. But the thing is, everybody was on the same page. We need to get Abyss over. And I knew from just osmosis, to use the $3 word, that Dr. Stevie would need to stay over to get Abyss over, and then bringing Raven, Mick Foley, Daphne, all these people, even Trevor Murdoch and other people kind of in the orbit of all this stuff. Matt Morgan, that's how it started in Philly.
How much before you debuted, or at least before your face was shown on TV, how much of all the Abyss storyline was hashed out? Or were you sort of just going week to week, basically, and trying to improve on it?
No, I think Russo knew when they made the match between him and Matt Morgan for the cage match in Philly, that's where Dr. Stevie was going to debut. Of course, you get the obligatory cheers and the obligatory ECW chants, but did we think it was going to go all the way to Victory Road? We knew there was going to be a match. We knew eventually Abyss was going to break free from whatever manipulation I was doing as Dr. Stevie. That the secret was, and it never really came out on screen too much, that although I was a therapist for Abyss and Daphne and maybe even other people, that was kind of a concept that I was going to be this person that brought these people together in a stable, that I was the most insane one out of all of them. It's the American Psycho Patrick Bateman thing. Looks normal, acts normal on the surface, but he's even more crazy than all these crazy people around him.
Did you have business cards?
No, I didn't, but I did have prescription slips that when I put people out with the general anesthesia, I was going to do the $1 Million Man and stuff the prescription slip in their mouth. Oh, I stole from everybody.
Hey, I was going to say, you should have stolen from Patrick Bateman and made like a 3-minute monologue about how nice these prescriptions are. They're printed on an eggshell.
I'm going to tell you right now, one of the vignettes that I pitched, and Dixie actually loved it, was the opening of American Psycho in every single scene in the condo.
Like the peeling off of the face thing, yeah.
Yeah, her favorite was going to be the shower scene, but we.
Aha. Now you hinted at
and
just before.
somehow I was going to get pinned by Jeff Jarrett during the vignette.
In the shower?
No.
I'm thrown out.
The king of the shower match.
You can get the wettest for pay-per-view only. You would attack Abyss when Abyss was on the couch when he is telling you about accepting Matt Morgan's challenge to a first blood match. Talk about this segment specifically, please.
Oh, I felt terrible. And he was like, you need to slap the S out of me because if you don't, I'm going to get mad. It's kind of like the contrary of the Dr. Stevie trying to keep Abyss from being violent and then becomes ultra violent and then sits down and he goes, let's continue or something like that. Or what, as I was saying.
Do you know who your character kind of reminds me of, just with you describing it? Brian Wilson's from the Beach Boys, Dr. Landry.
I am not familiar
that story
with
at
that.
all?
No, I'm not.
You need to... Love and Mercy. It's a great biopic, and Brian Wilson's played by John Cusack. Doesn't look anything like him, but it's a really good biopic, and then it's Dr. Landry, his living therapist for years. Then over the years you find... And this is all based on, a true story, obviously, is that you find out that all of a sudden he's now his business partner and he's now a co-writer on some of his songs, and then eventually they had to get, lawyers on it to get rid of him eventually, but that was over the course of years. But I thought the way you described Dr. Stevie is kind of that in my mind.
Yeah, I just thought it would be the manipulative person that's hiding under the mask, pun intended from the American Psycho thing, hiding under the mask of somebody trying to help, but deep down, I am the most sick, depraved one of all these supposed hourly crazy people around me.
Dr. Eugene Landry is played by Paul Giamatti, so you already know it's going to be great if he's in it. Anyway, let's move on. Lauren would play Abyss's girlfriend and threaten to report you to the medical board, and Abyss tried to shut it down, and then you and Lauren would go back and forth constantly about you saying Abyss was crazy, and Lauren would say Abyss was sane. She must have been pretty game then, because she wasn't a wrestler. She was like a legit broadcaster. I looked her up, and she's doing work for the Golf Channel now. So she was like a sports broadcaster. She did backstage interviews for a couple of years for TNA. How'd you rope her in?
I didn't rope her in. She was just there. Russo, I think, roped her in, but she was really game for it because it was Beauty and the Beast with her and Abyss. It was me being the third wheel and also trying to get between him and his girlfriend and manipulate him because she is trying to tell him the truth and I can't have that. And then I almost convinced her I was trying to help him in that one vignette. And then, of course, I commit the, non-prosecutable felony on wrestling TV and kidnap her. I've poisoned people, kidnapped them. I've done a bunch. I mean, I haven't hit anybody with a car, I guess, but that's, I don't know. I'm not retired from that yet. If you wanted me to do, you just want me to do vignettes as Dr. Stevie. As a matter of fact, just fast forwarding and a side note, a little Easter egg. Johnny Swinger, when he was doing the retro, like grizzled pro wrestler with all the tropes, with the fanny pack, with the gimmicks in it, brother, I was going to be his personal doctor that was writing him scripts for TV. He was trying to get me back to TNA, at least for like one shot. And then there was the one where everybody was in kind of like the mental institution, Raven and other people. And Swinger was trying to get me in as the doctor of the asylum, as a little Easter egg. But they said I wasn't a big enough star. But aha.
You would have an in-ring segment with Daphne and Abyss where you would announce that Daphne would be in the Monsters Ball match against the woman, and Abyss would be in a corner, etc. When Abyss tried to push back, you pulled your belt out and he got scared. Now, this is particularly interesting because we're not going to be talking about the Abyss Matt Morgan First Blood match and everything, but he'd gone through all that a few weeks ago, yet he was still more scared of you. So that's a good little bit of psychology there, leading up to, obviously, when he'd turn on you and you'd fight him later on down the road on pay-per-view as well. But who came up with the idea that he was that afraid of you?
I think it was Russo, but also at the same time, the belt thing was just improvisation. The belt thing was supposed to be some kind of threat to do whatever. And I had mentioned, like, right before we went out there, I think I'm just going to take him off my belt like you're a child, and I'm going to whip you with the belt. What person does that not translate with? Now, like, here's the interesting part. You think about it at this point, what you just said, the presentation of what we have at that point, which is still pretty early in the Dr. Stevie character, but it's establishing, and this is with all the stink of WWE on me, but as Dr. Stevie, I'm starting to be presented as some kind of mysterious, viable threat. Like, you just asked a question. It's not in a way of, you're like looking like, he just wrestled a 7-foot guy. He's wrestling all these supposed real fighters and badasses. He's more afraid of his doctor, who hasn't even taken his shirt off or wrestled a match yet. He's more afraid of him than anybody. Why? And you kind of subconsciously say, I need to see more so I can figure out why he is scared of him. It's kind of a cool thing. And the belt, who as a kid, and at least in our generation or mine, who hasn't been afraid when the father takes the belt off to discipline them?
We're going to be talking more about Abyss, obviously, in the weeks to come when we're talking more about TNA. We're probably going to follow this up next week, obviously, I think. It makes sense to. Dutch has said that, and other people have as well, is that Abyss always had maybe too many ideas, and he's one of the guys who'd kind of have to rein back. And the example that I always heard was like the Monsters Ball matches, where he would just kind of just do everything in every single match, and he was like way too enthusiastic. And it's not a bad thing to be enthusiastic, but he was like maybe giving too much away, and then the Monsters Ball matches kind of became a bit redundant after a while, because it was always the same tables and thumbtacks and everything, that kind of thing. Was Abyss, once again, you say, great mind for the business, OCD with details, apart from the poison in the coffee, of course, which we talked about earlier. But was he a guy that you felt you had to rein in occasionally because he would go a bit off the reservation with some of his ideas?
Well, I think a couple times, or more than a couple times, Dutch and Russo had to rein us both in from what because I had a lot to prove, and Abyss wanted to prove something with this. And also, in a way, Abyss was wrestling all those hardcore matches, all that violence, all that bleeding. This was a heavy storyline-based angle with a lot of talking, a lot of interaction, and even our Victory Road match, it was violent, but not by Monsters Ball or Abyss terms. It was a very simple match that we're going to talk about maybe in part 2, but you led up to having all this heat and me just essentially getting squashed, but then cutting a promo the week after to get my heat back. That's the kind of stuff right there. But yeah, Abyss and I both had ideas. Sometimes I would but you remember too, I'm very early in the company. I'm in that first 6 months. I don't want to get heat with anybody and speak out of turn. So I kind of had to let Dutch and Russo, even Cornette, if he stepped in, kind of rein Abyss in. It wasn't my job to do that, at least at this point. But I could appreciate it. You know what's funny? It's just like anything else in wrestling. What would you rather have? Somebody coming out with too much energy and rein them in, or somebody with no energy that you have to, come on. So if he has no ideas and no enthusiasm, now it's like pulling teeth to get him to do anything. There's two different ways to look at it.
We're going to be talking more about Mick Foley coming in, Raven, Matt Morgan, loads of other people we're going to be talking about in TNA's Part 3, I guess, with the Dr. Stevie run. Just before we do, where does Abyss rank in your favourite opponents?
Oh, wow. And this is a great compliment because it's hard to pick the top 3 or 5 because I had so many, but he's in there. Would he be the number one opponent? We didn't have enough. Like the whole Dr. Stevie run, there just wasn't enough. That EV2 thing came along and wiped away all the great work that all of us had done. Myself, Dutch, Abyss, Russo, Daphne, Raven. We had a great little kind of bubble within that wrestling universe. So we've barely scratched the surface. But I would say Abyss is in my definite top 5. I'd have to put Dreamer and Val 1A, 1B. I wrestled those guys a ton. Since we talked about Test, I would put Test just from the number of times that we worked as number 3. And then right there in the top 5, probably at number 4 would be definitely Abyss, if not even a little bit higher.
Kind of a big compliment since you only really wrestled him,
No, but I put the vignettes, the storyline, and you got to remember what you didn't see on TV, the creative process and talking it over and having fun. Remember, I lit his leg on fire, another felony I got away with. And the fire marshal standing right there to take the state. The fire marshal was an accessory before and after the fact. Well, if he got charged, which we didn't.